tell you why it's so significant for him. But before I touch any of those articles, I just want to give you the preliminaries. For those of you who don't know, you can always call into the show, and the phone number is 404-873-1349. And you'll probably see it on the screen later in the show, and we'll make sure we repeat it. But again, that's 404-873-1349. And please feel free to call in. And if you do not want to be on live, don't worry. As soon as somebody pick up the phone, you're not on live. You're talking back in the control room. So if you just want to send a question to us, please feel free to do that. And we also had cases of people not calling in live, but while they're watching live, they send us messages over the internet. And you can reach us at myspace.com/Atlanta Caribbean Report, and that will be on the screen later as well. And I hate to throw out all this information with it not be on the screen yet, because I know you can't write it down as quick. So we definitely want to mention it again, but you can reach us at that website, again, myspace.com/Atlanta Caribbean Report, and at the email address atlcaribbeanreport@yahoo.com. Again, that's atlcaribbeanreport@yahoo.com. And for those of you that are watching us on cable, but cannot always be in front of your TV on Friday nights, if you didn't already know, you can catch us live on the internet during the show airings, which is every Friday from 7 p.m. to 8 p.m. If you go to peopletv.org, and then on the right-hand corner, there's a button that basically says watch the program, watch live broadcast now. Click on that, and you'll be able to see us. I know I threw out a lot of information, but if you just remember one of those, if you remember the phone number that I gave, you can call in and get the website and so forth. If you remember the website, you can get the phone number and everything else. So we try to make it that way so you don't have to remember a million things. Now that the preliminaries are gone, excuse me, I'd like to turn it over to Karen, because she has a lot of important information that I mentioned to you earlier, that I teased you with a little bit earlier. But here's the full, well, not the full meal, because you got to go online to get the rest. We don't have enough time to give you the full meal.
Yes, and we're going to be, talking back and forth a little bit about it. What I have for you this evening is the first Caribbean American person who was sworn in this past Tuesday. He was the 82nd Attorney General of the United States, and that is Eric Holder Jr.
Right, and I'm going to say 2 points on that. See, I'm jumping to start talking again. I'm sorry.
He's African American.
Right, I'm going to say not just that, but he's the first Caribbean American and the first black. Period, to hold that position.
Correct.
And the confirmation went through in February, which is Black History Month. So it's like, that's what I mentioned earlier when I said we have even recent to today, we're still making history.
Yes, and it says here, was sworn in officially on Tuesday as the 82nd Attorney General of the United States, yes. And his family lineage is from Barbados.
Wow.
Yes, indeed. One thing he said that he addressed his fellow employees, and he mentioned to them that there's no favoritism, and there's not going to be any favoritism in political backgrounds. No favoritism.
And you know what? People may immediately say, oh, of course there shouldn't be, but the reality is that's the way it is. I mean, I'm not in government, but I work a lot with the federal government when I used to live in D.C., and then when I went to corporate, same thing. Wherever you go, there's always that favoritism. And that's huge not to be a part of in an organization.
I want to quote something that he says, and I have to read it
do,
directly. It says, "We must strengthen the activities of the federal government as we protect the American people from terrorism. We must restore the credibility of this department, which has been so badly shaken by allegations of improper political indifference. And we must eradicate the traditional missions of the department." Yes. So basically he has these, 3 goals in mind, and he wants to just basically have the government to be more in the shining light. And that's what President Obama is talking about, to have a transparent government. So basically part of his team is saying the same thing.
Right.
Okay, integrity, honor, we the people.
That's right, and so we definitely have to give a big congratulations to Eric Holder, to the island of Barbados, and like I said, we're all one here, so not just the Barbados, but the whole of all the Caribbean, all of the islands, and of course we're here in the U.S. and it's a U.S. position, so even here in the U.S.
Well,
Now,
probably we can get later on Dr. Lane, right,
Right.
Talk further about this.
Right, now you know in the past, for those of you who watched previous episodes, we spoke a lot on this, and well, the reason I'm hesitating is we spoke plenty on it, but we held back just because it wasn't official. Not that we didn't think it was going to be, but we held back just a little because it wasn't official. So now that it is, I mean, we're definitely want to spread more on it. And as we mentioned, time is limited on this show. If you go to our website, and let me mention again, myspace.com/Atlanta Caribbean Report. You look on the right-hand corner, there's a link that says news sources for the show. Click on that, you'll definitely be able to get more information on this article. Now I was going to say, well, never mind, I know you had a comment, so I'll hold my thought.
Yes. What is going on here is every department head, okay, wants their department to shine.
Right.
Okay, and he is calling the Justice Department the crown jewel.
Okay.
You know, so basically we're
So
going to have more transparency.
Good.
We're going to see everybody being more accountable. So we the people, okay, for the people, the way the Constitution talks about.
Good, good. And of course, we're going to continually give you updates on this show regarding what's going on.
With him.
But, I mean, you definitely don't just sit back. Be active. I mean, when we're not on Friday nights, go to our website, click on the news sources, follow along, and then we're going to bring you that further information and further discussion on this topic. Now, the next thing I want to move to, like I said, we in a present day history, but it didn't just start today with Caribbean Americans. It goes way back. And that's the next point that Karen is going to touch on.
The Caribbean-born nationals of Black history in the United States. We have Marcus Garvey. Marcus Garvey, from Jamaica.
Okay.
All right, Marcus Garvey. People think and they know him as the person to set forth on Black rights.
Right.
And he's very well known. He came here and started that movement.
Right.
For us to do that.
Right.
So that is Black history, one of the most popular person from the Caribbean. Plus we have sports people.
Oh, definitely.
Oh, yes, a lot of sports. And matter of fact, you were supposed to look for somebody for
I checked the deal. I couldn't find anything specifically on the Super Bowl. I mean, of course, in the NFL, there's been different plays, but specifically on any of the Super Bowl rosters, Pittsburgh or the Arizona Cardinals, I couldn't find any information on any players of Caribbean birth or heritage.
What do you think the impact with Marcus Garvey did to do the setup or the ground foundation for African Americans, for just Black people?
Oh, I was going to say everything was building blocks. I mean, he was before King and everybody. King, as great as Martin Luther King was, it didn't start from there.
Right.
You had people like Marcus Garvey from the start. And one point I wanted to point out on Garvey, a lot of people just look at his political side. He had a cruise shipping line that a lot of people do not realize. An all Black-owned shipping line that was carrying various products way back then, and people do not realize that. So I encourage you, since we cannot cover everything on the show, please, on these search engines, whatever your favorite one is, just type in Marcus Garvey, or there's even DVDs. Please look at the background of it, because as you know, you only are going to get the highlights of anything. Just like if you miss a sporting event, you're never going to see the whole event. Like if you miss the Super Bowl, when you watch the sports programs, you're just going to see the highlights. You're just going to see what they want you to see. But I encourage you to go back and get the full game, the full background on all of these people that we're mentioning.
Yeah, so he was the grounder and the building block. And it also states here that I did not realize, it said that he was the founder of the Universal Negro Improvement Association and African Communities League. but lost largely to the recognition of the roots of Garvey and the Caribbean immigrant contribution to the United States, especially in Black History Month. So
yeah, there's a lot.
There it is. This is a lot of information on him. And if you want this information from Caribbean Report, you have to go to www.myspace.com/Atlantic Caribbean Report. And you go there, you'll see all the different various news links. Matter of fact, this came from Caribbean World News.
Right.
Yes.
Which is linked on our page. Well, on our page, it actually says, just real quick, it says Heartbeat News. That's because they recently changed their name. But Heartbeat News still connects to that website. Right.
And also, you'll find more information on the BBC link.
Correct, correct. Now, I was going to say a person that's not mentioned in that article, and I'm not faulting the article because that's just part one, and this is just the first week. They're going to have various articles throughout the month, so by me mentioning it, I'm probably jumping ahead. But they don't mention Shirley Chisholm. Now, a lot of you know her as being a black woman that ran for president back in the 70s, but a lot of you may not know that she was of Bajan descent. Oh, I better clear that up. When I say Bajan, I mean from Barbados. So that's another tidbit, and I'm sure they're going to mention it later on, so I'm not going to get real deep on that, but with us having President Obama elected this year, I think that's very important to mention that.
Yes, I think, and most likely, Black History Month is not going to be just dedicated to February. That we'll have to.
Oh yeah, for us.
Yeah,
for us.
We should probably, with President Obama, with our history classes, we'll probably incorporate more information for our children to learn, because there's so much to cover within that 1 month.
Yeah, that's important. That's important.
Their heritage.
And just not to get off subject, but I just thought of another point. Those of you that watched this last year in the May-June time frame, is now that June is Caribbean Heritage Month. I believe this year would be, now I got to think. I think this would be the third or fourth.
It would be the third.
It would be the third. This would be the third one this coming June. So there's a Caribbean Heritage Month, but like I said, going on its third year this June. So we would focus more on that when the time comes.
And there'll be lots of lectures, lots of good.
Oh yeah, there's lots of events.
Learning more about the African American and Caribbean heritage, because what they want to do is more so bridge the gap. Dedrick, do you know that Marcus Garvey is not the only person that made a contribution to Black history? That a Trinidadian born by the name of Stokely Carmichael also contributed towards Black history. And what he did was, he was the one who was heavily influenced in the Black Panthers Party. He was known as the honorary prime minister. I didn't realize that there was an honorary prime minister in the Black Panthers Party. As well as Carmichael, he coined the phrase, and let me read this phrase and what it says. It says here that institutional racism, and the definition for this is a form of racism that occurs in institutions such as public bodies and corporations, including universities. In the late 1960s, Carmichael defined institutional racism again as saying collective failure of organizations to provide an appropriate and professional service to people because of their color, culture, and ethnic background. Then we also have here Claude McKay. He is a Jamaican writer, a poet. Many contributions, lots of books, lots of poetry from him. And we also have Constance Baker Motley. She was born of parents from Nevis, and she was the first Black woman elected in the New York State Senate, and also the first woman who was the president of the Manhattan Borough president. So she was very instrumental in New York, and the person who also helped to swear her in is President Lyndon Johnson. And that's what I have for you for Black contributions in the United States, African American, and Caribbean.
MCAI Atlanta is a community of professionals devoted to the art and business of media communications. Our members work in all areas of traditional and new media. And although the tools and technology may vary, we all strive for the same goals: to teach, to market, to motivate, to educate, and often to inspire. And MCAI supports its members in so many different ways.
This organization is always forward-looking.
MCAI allows my employees to grow.
Coming to the meetings gets my creative juices going.
Where you can network with other people.
I meet people from all over the country, all over the world.
There's an outreach to students.
I think people should join the organization because of the relationships.
Valuable relationships that pay off.
MCAI
is a connection place.
It's a whole network of people that have your back.
Whatever our industry segment, we seek to clarify through visual media the spirit, that emotional link which connects one human being with another. MCAI enables us to succeed in that endeavor.
My area of expertise is really in corporate video production and broadcast. But I've been able through MCAI to meet people on the internet side. I'm meeting people that are in technology development, all kinds of different aspects of the business and outside.
You get to meet people that are doing things with some new technologies that you may not be familiar with.
From a business development standpoint, the organization helps me through creating relationships with people in MCAI.
I've found that getting involved is the best way to get things back from an organization.
The MCAI really has been an important part of professional growth.
I started with MCAI as a student, and through the years it's been great for my professional development, and it's helped me a lot in my career.
Our industry is always changing. When I come to an MCAI meeting, I find out who's doing what, how things are being done, and how our industry is changing.
Media professionals need to know that the MCAI is the organization in Atlanta. There's really no other organization like the MCAI.
And it means a lot of company exposure and personal exposure as well.
MCAI is a great organization, and you should join.
It's a fun place to be.
As you've heard from some of our other members, there are many benefits to an MCAI membership.
Media convergence,
recognition,
community service,
education.
But they don't mean a thing if you don't join us.
So there it is, MCAI Atlanta, a place to grow and network in our constantly evolving careers. Can you afford not to join us?
We're going to be chatting until we hear the music, and tell me when you're ready. Okay. Well, welcome back to the Caribbean Report. This is the second section of the Caribbean Report, My Preventive Health. Welcome to the audience. Today we have with us three very excited guests. We'll start with the first two. Robin Swain is the founder of Made Whole Inc.
Yes.
Is this right?
Yes.
And we have the beautiful lady, Mrs. Glenda Francis, who is a nursing director here. And what they have in common is that they are both Adventists. And today we're going to be speaking a little bit about the Adventist lifestyle. Now, many of you remember that for the last several weeks, this has been in the news because Oprah Winfrey did an incredible show that finally reminded the public that the Adventists have some of the best health statistics in the country and that they live the longest. And so I'm sure that you all want to know, what is it about the Adventist lifestyle that makes you guys live longer and ladies live longer? And so I'm going to start with the ladies first, of course, and I'm going to ask you to tell us a little bit about the Adventist lifestyle. What is it that's different about the Adventist lifestyle?
Well, you know, Adventism has been practiced for quite a number of years. And we focus primarily on the fact that the Bible says that our bodies are the temple of God, and and we have to take care of our bodies in order for the Lord to be able to dwell in our bodies. So we practice preventative health by eating well, exercising, getting adequate rest, trying to refrain from substances that are detrimental to bodies, like alcohol, tobacco in all its forms. And we try to refrain from eating foods that are very high in fats and cholesterols. Adventists, most Adventists, I should say, practice vegetarianism, and it's not just eating vegetables. Vegetarianism comes from the word vegus, which is a Latin word for whole, or eating healthy, complete. That's where the word originated. So we basically practice vegetarianism by eating a lot of legumes, nuts and grains. We eat foods that are high in protein. We try to refrain from the meats. As a result, we tend to have less problems with heart disease and high cholesterol. But basically, we practice what we refer to as a New Start, which is an acronym for practicing good nutrition, which I can elaborate on later on. Getting adequate, the E is for exercising, getting adequate exercise. W is for adequate water. S is for adequate sunshine. The T is for being temperate in all things, all refrain from the things that are detrimental to our lives, and the things that are good for us, try to do them in moderation. The R is for getting adequate rest. The T is for trusting in God as we practice all, healthy living and preventative health, to trust in God because He wants us to prosper and be in good health as our soul prospereth.
And she remembered it all. I know, Dr. Mack, you had some questions for her.
I did. Just going back for a moment, you said refraining from certain meats. Well, could you elaborate a little bit what type of meats are? Are you refraining from chicken and beef, or having fish only? Could you let us know a little bit more about that?
We try to refrain from eating most types of meats. We don't eat pork just by the nature of the fact that it's considered an unclean meat. But Adventists, the vegetarian Adventists try to refrain from eating any type of meat. Chicken, beef, lamb, we tend to stay away from those things and eat mostly nuts and grains and soy products. So we get our protein from those foods, rather than having to resort to the meats.
Okay. Now, Reverend Swain,
yes.
and I call you Reverend Swain.
Oh.
Robin, some people in America would consider that a fairly restrictive diet. Mm-hmm. They think that they're being constrained in some way. You travel the world a lot, helping people to understand how to take care of their health. How do you help them to think of these things as not restrictive but more preventive?
Okay. Good question. And the thing about it, it's a mindset.
Yes.
It's a mindset, it's a lifestyle. And what we look to do, basically what we try to do when we travel, we teach people how to live this lifestyle. And kind of add on what was already said, the premise being that we were bought with a price. And being bought with a price, then there comes responsibility, if you will, to take care of our bodies. And so along with teaching them the what to do, we also like to do the how. We do cooking classes. We do teaching them how to prepare foods that are healthy and tasty. I believe that God created us with taste buds, and so He wants us to enjoy the foods that He has. But it's a retraining, and when it comes to restrictive, definitely is a mindset. You know, based on the work we do, and we do seminars, we do consultations. I work with various type of people to help reverse degenerative diseases. Do seminars on the same, and because of the work I do, and you can attest, have seen people in dire situations. And so when we look at restrictive, you have to ask yourself, what is restrictive? When I see restrictive, I see having hundreds of dollars a month to spend just on medication, so much so that you cannot even enjoy a family outing or a thing of that nature because of the financial constraints, or restrictive being cannot even get out of bed, who would love to just go out and experience the sunshine. So when you look at the totality of what's restrictive, you have to look at broader than as to where I am right now, but what takes place when we don't put in practices or measures that's going to actually help us to live an overall healthy lifestyle. And so, like I said, the key is to incorporate it, make it a lifestyle, not a diet, not a task list, but to incorporate the principles. And like it was mentioned earlier, biblical principles all throughout that God originally wanted. And the premise, again, going back to Eden.
Right.
There was an environment that God placed man in,
right.
and that environment is what he's trying to get us back to.
Yeah, and I know Dr. Mack wants to address the whole question of spirituality, but I just wanted to remind the audience that we're coming to you live at www.peopletv.org, and if you want to watch us live, you can go to the right-hand side of the page and just click on live. We're also coming to you on channel 24 Comcast. This is the Caribbean Report, the second half of the Caribbean Report, My Preventive Health. Dr. Mack, I know you had some other questions.
Well, that's good. Either one of you could answer this question. Now, as for the spirituality, how does that play overall within the lifestyle as well as the health within the lifestyle with the Adventist community?
Well, from my perspective, like I mentioned earlier, I take it very seriously when the Lord says to present your bodies as living sacrifice, holy and acceptable to Him, and to have our temples, not literal temples, but basically, spiritual temple, to be cared for in a way that He can dwell. If we're sick and we in the bed and we have to focus on our illnesses or aches and our pains, we really don't have time to spend with God. We don't have time for devotion. But if we take care of our bodies. For instance, every day I get up real early in the morning. I have my devotion. I have devotion with my family. Sometimes I have devotion by myself. I study the scriptures and I pray. Then I go out and exercise to get that fresh air. It might be 5 o'clock in the morning. It's dark. My husband and I, we go out with our dogs in tow, and we run, we walk, we do those kinds of things. But you have to have a clear mind. You have to be able to be focused. And this is why it's very important that we practice the preventative health that we practice, because we want to have time to spend with God. And like I said, if we're sick, we focus on our illnesses. We don't focus on spending quality time with Him.
And just to add on to that, the reality is that God, created our bodies, and it's really about a relationship with Him, and that becomes the true motivation. The true motivation to doing what we do is to actually, let's put it in physical terms. For those who are married or in relationships, from a physical perspective, you like to look your very best for that individual, okay? Absolutely. Now, when we look at from a spiritual perspective, we got, like you said, God says, present your bodies a living sacrifice. And so not only are we talking about the physical, but God wants our mind, God wants our heart, God wants our whole body. And so all these things are entailed in that. And it's something you enjoy doing. Why? Just like the relationship, not because it's required, but you want to present your best to that person that you love. And so when that relationship, that becomes the motivator. When you love God, you want to please Him. And so that plays a big factor, a very big factor into why I want to be healthy.
That's very well said. So spirituality becomes an integral part of the health equation in the Adventist system.
Yes, it does. And sometimes, when I work with people, I like to start with where they are. Some people can only see the aesthetic, and we start there. But eventually, we want to get you to the point where it pleases you to please Him, if you will.
Well, that is awesome. And I know we've got another young engineer who's your brother, who's also a physician, coming on the set later. And I just want to remind everyone again that we're coming to you on www.peopletv.org. and also on Channel 24 Comcast here in the Atlanta area. And today we have as guest Mr. Robin Swain, who is the director of Made Whole Inc., and he is Adventist. And we also have a nurse administrator who's also an Adventist, who's a good friend. I shouldn't say an old friend because she's young. And Ms. Glenda Francis. And of course, Dr. Mack, who's the co-host of the show. And one other question I wanted to ask you before we have to take a break. Obesity is a huge part of the equation here, of the health equation in the United States, and growing really around the world. Is becoming more and more important as a part of the health equation around the world. How do you approach the management of obesity? How do you in the Adventist population?
Okay, again, like to incorporate the very same principles we talked about: the nutrition, the exercise, the water, the sunshine, air, rest, trust in God. And basically, number one, we've got to recognize that, and I'm glad we're addressing that, because I liked when I work with disease, we treat obesity as a disease. And people say, well, it's not really a disease. Well, it really is, because not only is it a problem, but it's actually a doorway to a whole various group of problems when it comes to health. And so one of the things we like to immediately do is to remove them to a low-fat diet. Right. Some may ask, okay, well, what are the highest sources of fat in the diet? Well, traditionally speaking, animal products are the largest source of fat in the diet. And also, by the way, it's the only source of cholesterol in the diet. So it's going to be a similar approach when we're working with people with high cholesterol. So we're going to remove that highest source, or suggest ways that they will transition from that to lower fat diets. We're also going to recommend get more active. Walking does wonders for the body, as was mentioned earlier. Walking an hour a day, I can't even tell you the benefits. I remember one individual I had an opportunity to work with had hypertension, and he had tried everything and was incorporating. He was an Adventist as well, and one of the things I recommended to him was that he take his program that he was doing now, increase his walking to 1 hour. For whatever reason, I can't explain why, but things seem to happen at the 1 hour mark when it comes to walking. And so within 3 days, he was off all his medication. And so we definitely want to do that. A high fiber diet, want to bring more fiber into the diet. When it comes to, of course, you know as well, diseases and things of that nature, fiber plays a key. So those are things where we want to drink more water. In fact, I tell people, if I can get you to drink more water, eat vegetables, walk more, and then
so you're taking them back to nature, really.
We're going back to nature. It's nothing new. It's not complicated. You feel better. You look better. It's cheaper than anything you're doing right now. Keeps the house clean. It's a perfect. It's God's plan. It's the program that He gave us, and so it can't fail. That
is exciting. Well, good. Well, we're going to be coming up on a break fairly shortly, and I know, Dr. Mack, you can probably got enough time to get one more question in from Dr. Swain and from Reverend Swain and Ms. Francis here.
Well, I got a question for Glenda. Can you tell the audience a little bit more about the long-term care in our aging population and how the Adventist approach is?
In the long-term care, long-term acute care is really my background. We see a lot of similarities in the population. And we mentioned in an offline conversation earlier that it may be because because we're seeing such similarities in the population right now, it's probably because of circumstances, economic circumstances, that those people, the elderly way back yonder, did not have some of the resources that we have now to be able to practice good preventative health. As a result, we've seen some similarities in disease processes that we see in the general population. We also, Adventists are also focusing on planning and creating long-term care facilities for their parishioners. We have some throughout the country. There's one in Alabama that's doing really well. And as we age, this age group, as we age and we practice good preventative health, what are we expecting to see down the road is that we live to a ripe old age not having some of the problems that we're seeing now in the general population, but we see the natural aging process. And we are going to age, whether we like it or not. But we want to age gracefully and not with all the aches and the pains and the arthritis and the diabetes and the high blood pressure. We can just age gracefully in a senior citizen facility somewhere that caters to our lifestyle, that they know that we practice preventative health, they know we like exercise and we like to walk, we like to drink water, we don't eat meat. So we can feel comfortable in that environment knowing that they're catering to our lifestyle.
Right, so in your senior citizens facilities, you continue the Adventist lifestyle all the way through?
Yes,
right.
We continue to practice.
Do you think, Robin, that this is responsible for the fact that, partly responsible in the case, for the fact that the Adventists tend to live longer?
Yeah, I think it definitely plays a huge part. I mean, the reality is life is, whether we're talking spiritual, mental, physical, you're going to get out what you put in. What you invest is what you get out. And so the things, you do the right things, by God's grace, we get the right results. So.
Right. Well, tell us before we take a break, tell us again what you are doing. Tell us a little bit more about Made Whole, Inc.
This is Made Whole, what we do, and it's simple. We do seminars, we do health consultations, we travel around, we'll go to churches, we'll go to profits, nonprofits, and basically we're teaching people about healthy living. We're teaching people how to eat right, how to reverse degenerative diseases. We work with hypertension and diabetes and allergies and arthritis, cancers, any of those type of degenerative diseases. And we show people through seminars and through one-on-one consultations how they can reverse their disease, how they can get off of medication. We also have programs where we will do cooking classes, and I have DVDs as well that I make available that they can see, things we've done in other places, demonstrations, and I also share testimonials with them. Like I said, it's one thing to hear about it, but it's another thing to hear specific situations where people have, just like you or just like your loved one you're concerned about, have been able to get off of their medication and basically live a better quality of life. Right. It's one thing to live longer, and we're living longer, the statistics show, but what is the quality of life if we live, let's say, a longer, but we spend the last 20, 25 years in a home because we were not able to care for ourselves because of poor choices. And so these are the things we want to avoid by getting a hold of people sooner and saying, hey, let's take some measures now so that we can see the end product be different later.
Well, Dr. Mack and I want to continue this discussion, and time flies when you're on the set. And so we're going to be taking a break in a short while. Before we take the break, I just want to remind everyone that we're coming to you at People TV, www.peopletv.org. If you will go to the right side of the screen, you click on live show. You can watch us live, or you can go to channel 24, Comcast here in Atlanta. And I know you had a website that you wanted.
Yes, our website is www.faithmadewhole, and that's a current website. We're actually redoing that website. We're going to add a second website called madewhole.org. But right now, if you go to www.faithmadewhole.com, you'll have more information. If you would love to contact us, we would love to come out to your area, show you how to specifically customize it for your organization or individual or family. So.
And Dr. Mack, before the break, you may want to tell them a little bit about the blog. Well,
it's www.phvoice.com. It's a free interactive site where you could ask questions to physicians, or also put on a statement or a blog, as they say in the technical world, and pretty much get the reaction. You could get feedback from physicians as well as your peers, and it's a great way to interact and also tell your own story if you have something amazing, as we've seen in the past couple of shows with colon cancer and all the other disease states.
Well, we want to thank you. We want to thank you very much. Will you stay with us for a second while we?
I'll be dying.
Yeah, while when we come back till after the break, and if you will, we'll take a short break now, and then we will we'll bring your brother, who is also a physician, an Adventist and a physician,
and a lot to share too,
and has a lot to share with us before our time runs out. So if you'll take a break now, we'll come right back. Okay.
MCAI Atlanta is a community of professionals devoted to the art and business of media communications. Our members work in all areas of traditional and new media. And although the tools and technology may vary, we all strive for the same goals: to teach, to market, to motivate, to educate, and often to inspire. And MCAI supports its members in so many different ways.
This organization is always forward-looking.
MCAI allows my employees to grow.
Coming to the meetings gets my creative juices going.
Where you can network with other people.
I meet people from all over the country, all over the world.
There's an outreach to students.
I think people should join the organization because of the relationships.
Valuable relationships that pay off.
MCAI
is a connection place.
It's a whole network of people that have your back.
Whatever our industry segment, we seek to clarify through visual media the spirit, that emotional link which connects one human being with another. MCAI enables us to succeed in that endeavor.
My area of expertise is really in corporate video production and broadcast. But I've been able through MCAI to meet people on the internet side. I'm meeting people that are in technology development, all kinds of different aspects of the business and outside.
You get to meet people that are doing things with some new technologies you may not be familiar with.
From a business development standpoint, the organization helps me through creating relationships with people in MCAI.
And it means a lot of company exposure and personal exposure as well.
I found that getting involved is the best way to get things back from an organization.
The MCAI really has been an important part of professional growth.
I started with MCAI as a student, and through the years it's been great for my professional development, and it's helped me a lot in my career.
Our industry is always changing. When I come to an MCAI meeting, I find out who's doing what, how things are being done, and how our industry is changing.
Media professionals need to know that the MCAI is the organization in Atlanta. There's really no other organization like the MCAI.
You're able to see how video is now delivered differently than it was just a few years ago.
We've connected the dots from people who are looking for cameramen, looking for talent.
So I don't have to recreate the wheel every time.
MCAI is a great organization, and you should join.
When I'm traveling out of town, it's always nice to know that there are other MCAI members that I can rely on.
It's a fun place to be.
As you've heard from some of our other members, there are many benefits to an MCAI membership.
Marketing,
media convergence,
recognition,
community service,
education.
But they don't mean a thing if you don't join us.
So there it is, MCAI Atlanta, a place to grow and network in our constantly evolving careers. Can you afford not to join us?
Segment on the Caribbean Report, and right now we have Dr. Ryan Swain. Thank you very much for coming in. And I wanted to start off with a question, and you're a medical doctor from Alabama, and how have you incorporated the Adventist, the whole Adventist idea with your patients?
Yes, that's a very good question. Well, first thing we have to understand is that the word doctor itself, coming from the Latin word docere, means a teacher. And so as a physician, we have to be more than just, in the traditional sense, healers of disease, if you will, but also educators of our patients. And what I find to do is that most of the time when patients come to me, they have acute situations that need to be addressed acutely. And in this case, you know, we have to treat them in a medical fashion. But at the same time, what we do is we teach them that, as the Bible says, that the body is fearfully and wonderfully made. And God has put in us, in our bodies that is, the principle of self-healing, self-replication. And what happens is that if we would just return to the right path, if you will, the body the majority of the times will bring itself back to its own equilibrium. And so what we do as physicians is we treat the acute situation now, the emergent situation now, and at the same time we begin to educate our patients about, what went wrong, where did we deviate from the pathway, correct those errors, and in time we see that the medications that were so needful in the acute case become less needful, with the goal, of course, of alleviating and eliminating medications.
But Dr. Ryan, that is very much against what we see a lot in medicine. I've got patients who come into me and they've been on a medicine for the ulcers for the last 10 months or sometimes for years. What are we doing in medicine? Are we getting further and further away from the Adventist style and more into sort of chemical dependency?
Well, I think that, again, not to overquote, but the scriptures teaches in Hosea 4:6 that my people are destroyed for lack of knowledge. And to be sure, disease processes are multifactorial. Oftentimes in traditional medicine, we approach disease from only one or two factors, and so our treatment of the disease only addresses, for the most part, a lot of the symptomologies, not necessarily attacking the root. And so oftentimes those patients that have had ulcers for numbers of years, we ask ourselves, why? Why is this the case? What is the root of this? What is the lifestyle issues? And again, not to say that every single disease is brought about by lifestyles, but again, we see in the explosion of, a lot of gastrointestinal problems, we see in metabolic issues, we see in cardiac issues, we see this explosion in the last 50 years as a direct consequence to lifestyle. And so what happens is we see these things propagated from generation to generation, not necessarily because of the genetics, but we see a continuance from generation to generation of the same habits. And so what happens is we have seen in our ministry, we've seen that even in generational diseases like ulcers, like high blood pressures, that when the conditions that cause these things are eliminated, in due time, but surely in due time, the actual underlying pathology corrects itself.
And Glenda, in your profession as a nurse, how do you incorporate that in conjunction with the medications how do you bring the Adventist theory and idea to the forefront when it comes down to, kind of going with the asking people about their medications and trying to tell them how to control and which way to go?
As Ryan mentioned earlier, even though I'm not, I work as a nurse administrator, but I work alongside the nurses, and I like to have a hands-on approach. So I use opportunities whenever they present themselves to teach, to find out what medication a patient is taking, and to teach them about that medication, find out why they're taking the medication, and teach them what they can do to maybe halt the need or decrease the need for the types of medication they're taking. Not going against the physician in any way at all, because we always want them to consult with the physician, but to start inculcating good habits, good eating habits, exercising, resting. There are just so many little things that we can do on the front end that would pay dividends on the back end. There's so much we can save on the front end by doing the things that we're supposed to do, doing the right things, eating right, exercising, getting adequate sleep. I mean, most of us are guilty of not getting adequate rest, but the body heals itself when we rest. So if we do these preventative things on the front end, we wouldn't have to worry about all those things on the back end. We save that money, we spend some money on the front end taking good care for ourselves and planning good habits developing good habits, and then on the back end, we will not be paying for the medication and the hospitalization and all the things that we see in today's age.
Fantastic. And I want to ask you about some nuggets that you can leave for the audience, because again, as you will find, time goes very rapidly when you're on the show. But before I ask you to tell us a few nuggets that you can leave with us, I want to remind the audience that we're coming to you on www.peopletv.org. You can go to the right side of the screen and click on Live Show and you will see us. We're also on Comcast, Channel 24 here in Atlanta. And you're listening to the Caribbean Report, which preceded this show. And this is the second half of the Caribbean Report, My Preventive Health. Tell us, Dr. Ryan, can you leave us a few nuggets, leave the audience a few nuggets that they can take away regarding changing their lifestyle to become more in tune with the Adventist lifestyle, which Oprah has just told us, the whole world will help us live a better quality of life and perhaps a longer lifestyle.
Absolutely. And there's just so much. I mean, we can only begin to scratch the surface here. But one aspect that has not really been touched upon so much tonight that I would just like to touch upon very briefly is the aspect of mental health. The scriptures again tells us that a merry heart doeth good like medicine, but a broken spirit drieth the bones. And believe it or not, there have been scientific studies, again, I cannot cite right now, but that state that the process of the release of endorphins when we're happy has a very beneficial effect on the body. And one nugget that I would like to leave that is really much the central component of the Adventist lifestyle is a trust in God. She said during the New Start that last T was trust in God. And this is really foundational. I mean, it should be first, because we know that in the medical profession that stress alone, it exacerbates every other medical condition. It decreases the immune function. It again, from anything from the common cold to cancer, stress makes it much worse. And we find that when we have what we call an attitude of gratitude, and we learn to count our blessings, as abstract as it may sound, when we start thinking in a positive direction, the Bible says, as a man thinketh in his heart, as a man or woman, so is he. And so the first nugget I would like to leave is just the simple fact that we need to change our mindsets, and we need to begin to see the positive aspect of things. We need to begin to be thankful for the things, and we will even see just in that an improvement in our overall well-being. Another nugget I would like to leave is just, again, obesity, which was touched upon earlier, is the doorway to so many different ills. I mean, it's the doorway to obesity, the doorway to cardiac problems, high cholesterol. I mean, the list goes on. And there have been recent studies that have suggested that even a modest decrease of 10% of the body weight we would see drastic improvements in the health of our patients just by 10%. So if I weigh 200 pounds, I mean, just a modest decrease of 20 or so pounds, which is, it sounds a lot, but in the process of time with bagging back from the table a little bit, exercising a little bit, drinking more water, this is something that's very doable. It's very doable, and we will see much benefit.
Well, I think what he said is give thanks, then trust in God, right?
Absolutely.
And then, of course, then try to decrease your body weight by 10%, if you're at least 10%, if you're
overweight.
If you're overweight. Well, good. That is. I say I will add one more degree to your many degrees. You're an engineer, you're a doctor, and now I'm sure that you're going to be a minister as well after this. Well, thank you so much for joining us this evening. Thank you, Nurse Francis, and thank you, Dr. Mack, always a great co-host. And thank you, Dr. Ryan, for joining us. I know you came all the way in from University of UAB
yes.
Medical Center, and we want to remind you again that we will be continuing this series on preventive health on the Caribbean Report. Watch us next week, same time, same place, channel 24 Comcast here in Atlanta, www.mypreventivehealth or www.PH my PH Voice as well, and also peopletv.org. We'll be here with you next week to continue these great discussions on preventive health. Yeah, this is great. This is very good, and thank you so much for coming in. This was good. Yeah, we'd really love to have you come back and have you guys come back and have a much longer session on this, because the time really goes very, very rapidly when you're doing that. Yeah, yeah, I know.